You're watching CHCO-TV's gavel-to-gavel coverage of the November 5th, 2025 Special Committee of the Whole meeting for the Municipal District of St. Stephen. I'm Florence Mitchell. In today's meeting, Downtown St. Stephen will make a budget presentation and committee will present the Municipal District's 2026 budget. So let's join committee in the Moosehead Room at the Garcelon Civic Center in St. Stephen.
Okay, good evening, everyone. This is the Municipal District of St. Stephen Special Committee of the Whole meeting agenda for Wednesday, November 5th, 2025 at 6 p.m. Call to order. Before we begin, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are gathered today on the ancestral unceded territory of the Passamaquoddy people. To get going, I need a mover and seconder that the agenda for the Special Committee of the Whole meeting, November 5th, 2025, be approved. Councillor Wright, Councillor Harding. Any questions? All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Seeing none, motion carried. Thank you. Any conflicts of interest this evening? Seeing none. And, all right, next up, Mary Dow to present the Downtown St. Stephen budget. Whenever you're ready.
Good evening. Thank you to the Mayor, CAO, and councillors for having me this evening to deliver information for the 2025-2026 budget. As I am the new Executive Director for the Downtown St. Stephen BIA, the past couple months have been rewarding and I look forward to the continued growth and great success in our downtown community, driven by positivity, collaboration, and building relationships with our partners. To offer some history and to define Downtown St. Stephen BIA, it was founded in 1984 after receiving the official Business Improvement Act designated under Business Improvement Act in 1982. A BIA is geographically defined urban area containing non-residential properties located in the municipality's central business district. The defined area for the St. Stephen BIA is beginning on King Street at the former St. Stephen Inn and High Tides, traveling down King Street onto Milltown Boulevard to Watson Street, including Canada Border Services Agency, Budd Avenue, and the waterfront. A BIA is designed to revitalize a specific downtown or commercial area by having businesses and property owners have resources to manage local improvement, promote campaigns, and other beautification initiatives to grow economic activity. I work closely with the municipality, council, and staff. Our goal is to bring collaboration and engagement from the business community. The operating budget of the St. Stephen BIA is funded solely by a levy that is paid by all non-residential properties within the above-mentioned boundaries. The levy is based on a percentage of property's assessed value that appears on their property tax bill. The rate for our BIA is 20 cents per $100 assessed value. As our fiscal year is August 31st, you will see the budget for the 2025-2026. The amount of the levy is $29,713. The St. Stephen BIA 2026 assessment base is $14.8 million. I am pleased to say in the last 4 years, the St. Stephen BIA has contributed $248,371 in grants that has helped assist MDSS festivals to help offset cost, equipment invested in community safety, and many beautification projects. The capital project grant that has been recently acquired from Downtown St. Stephen BIA is $20,000. I have met and discussed with Jeff Renault and Kev Sumners that this could be spent in our downtown area in partnership with the Municipal District of St. Stephen. The plan for this grant is for 10 solar lights and poles for the walking trail. Pricing involves for 10 units is $19,400. Poles will be $16,750, and the estimated shipping is $1,700. Partnering with the municipality will mean that the town will be paying for the remainder of the above mentioned. I have reached out to the program officer at Service Canada to apply for the Canada Summers Jobs Program. A student will be paid by the BIA and work under the supervision of the Garcelon Civic Center for the 2026 summer season. This position is for a grounds maintenance worker that will have 8 weeks of employment and 35 hours per week. Excited to mention that on November 21st, I'll be offering $10,000 of our downtown St. Stephen dollars at a 10% discount. For example, you can purchase $200 of our downtown dollars for $180. Each person can purchase up to a maximum of $200. This is huge for our downtown area. Currently, we have approximately 40 downtown BIA members that accept the downtown dollars. Downtown St. Stephen does absorb 10% of this cost. However, this is huge for our downtown area to support our businesses. I'll be working closely with the downtown businesses and partners for new events for the remainder of the 2025 and 2026 upcoming year. Thank you for your time, and if you have any questions, I can certainly try to answer them.
No questions, that's good. Well presented then, there's no questions.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for all your work and effort and putting that together, and I'm looking forward to those lights. Yes, thank you so much. Oh, did I turn that? I probably didn't turn that on. It's on now. Okay. I guess the next up is the municipal budget review draft general operating fund. Jeff.
Thank you, Your Worship. So you can rest a little relaxed tonight, Council. We're not going to be asking you to make any big decisions tonight. We're going to save that for those discussions for next week. Intention for tonight is to go through the current status of the draft budget so that you can understand where we are at with our internal budgeting and what the and prepare for the policy option decisions that we're going to ask you to make next week at our next meeting. The budget process for us this year did begin with a public consultation program, as we had discussed in past meetings. We did release a pre-budget community survey. Those results, in fact, the raw data from those results, unedited, were released to council and to the public. We also did 2 in-person sessions. They were intended by a small but engaged group, and I think the conversations were really good. So we were able to track that data and try and use that to also affect the budget we're going to be presenting. This is a repeat of a slide that was at the last session about kind of the key takeaways from the public consultation process, the concerns that we heard. So we have affordability, obviously infrastructure, public safety, economic development, the rural-urban cost-sharing model, communications. There was a preference to maintain and improve services as opposed to cut services, and there was a desire to reduce costs within the general government section. So we will look at that as we go through. A couple other from the community survey that I wanted to just bring up as well. About, again, it's on the communication side, is how do people want to be kept in the loop. So we are keeping that under our watchful eye for future presentations and information sharing. You see the public meetings did score lower than some of the digital and online scorings, which kind of corresponds with the turnout we had at the public meetings. Although I do think those are valuable, even if they are have a smaller attendance. Again, this is where I pulled the maintain current tax rate and service levels was the dominant preference. So we can consider that as we get into next week and next 2 weeks of conversations. Road surfacing, there's no surprise. I don't think to anybody in this room was the top priority. It is the one that we all see every day as we travel the community, and we fully acknowledge that it serves as kind of the face of the community to newcomers coming in. So we are going to be looking at addressing that significantly as well when we get into the capital side of things. We just put out this question about if property taxes were to be increased. Again, there's no proposal from administration to do so. What would be acceptable? We do see that no increase is acceptable was 52% of the respondents, followed by 1 to 3%. This is always the good reminder for everybody when we get into the budgeting. Essentially, we have two different budgets. The general fund, which is funded by property tax, user fees, and grants, and the water and sewer fund, which is water rates, sewer rates, and grants on that side. Always try to remind folks that property tax money can't cross over into the other budget. So tonight we'll only be talking about the general fund, and so which means it's going to be primarily focused on the property tax elements. Property tax is, as we all know, is driven by assessment. Found this nice graphic from our friends at the City of Fredericton that they use during their process, just on how assessment works, because a lot of times we get labeled with that issue, but it is completed by our friends at GNB. They provide that data to us in step 2. We set our tax rate. Then GNB will invoice and collect all the taxes, so everything gets paid to GNB, and they just give us these nice monthly installments throughout the year as they collect the taxes. So, assessment being the driving factor of everything. This is the assessment summary for entering into 2026. We know GNB in their wisdom have imposed an assessment freeze for 2026. So the only new assessment we were eligible to get was anything that related to new build. So that was 1.5% of approximately 11, just less than $12 million worth of assessment. So here's how the assessment broke down across our region. So you'll see here the split between urban and rural assessment bases is rural is about 46% and urban is 54%. So for a big municipality, the way that it was designed by our friends at GNB, it is a relatively balanced assessment base as far as the urban-rural divide, which is a conversation that will factor in, I think, into the rural-urban cost share discussions that we'll be having in the future. Getting into a little bit more detail, if you take those assessment bases and apply the 2025 tax rates, so if we did not change the tax rates at all, these are the warrants that would come from each type of assessment, and the total tax revenue that would be generated off of 2025 rates would be $9.4 million and change. It's an important number to keep in mind. That number is different than what you have in your spreadsheets. For those of you that attended the public consultation sessions, we talked a little bit about the two ways of approaching budgeting. The sheet that you have with the spreadsheet, Excel sheets, that's Frank's department, and the tax revenue gets automatically calculated to balance the budget based on the expenditures that are in it. So that would be if we spent no more money outside of what is currently in the budget, that would be what we had to raise from taxes. As we go through this, my preferred approach, and I think it's a little bit more understandable from most councils that I've worked with and for the public, is to look at the 2025 rates. If we held rates the same, how much revenue does that generate, and what policy options does that open? And then you're looking at potential tax rate decreases, no different than any other expense that's being proposed. So it costs a certain amount to lower it by 1 cent. Just the same as a new pickup truck costs a certain amount of money. So it just becomes a natural expenditure of how funds work. It becomes a natural flow for our conversations when we get into to finalizing the expense side. Of course, taxes aren't the only source of revenue we have. We do have these other sources here. We do have, when you look at just highlight a couple here, the service to other levels of government, 230,000 of that big number is actually part of the recreation cost share agreement through the RSC. There's also an offsetting expense that we pay into that fund that brings down the net we get there, but That's where we do code that. Sale of services is nearly exclusively GC revenue from sales here at the GCC, whether that's canteen or memberships or day passes. All that revenue that comes in is what's there. Own source, that's a culmination of all of our building leases and grants that come in for various things across time. 100,000 of that would be the offset for the budget line we have in there for dangerous and unsightly properties when that money comes back from the government. So that's what's there. The unconditional grant, the 2.1 million, is the grant that Government of New Brunswick provides us as on an unconditional basis to operate our government. Conditional transfers, essentially the budget is $200 because we put $100 in each line to keep those lines open. They don't tend to be used very often, but when funds come in, it gives us a place to code them when they come in. Other transfers basically is two things. One, it's a transfer in from our utility which offsets some of the, they pay basically for the part of the admin for running the utility. So we recapture some of those costs here. And then the second year surplus that we have to bring in each year. So that's the run through of our revenue sources. Is there any questions? No? Okay. I was joking before the meeting. I've been looking at these numbers for 2.5 months. So if I go too quickly, Your Worship, please slow me down and stop me for questions, because it's just so natural now that we've been looking at them for so long. So the total revenue available, if we use 2025 taxation rates, is just a hair underneath $15 million. So that's the number that I will use in presenting things as to what policy options exist as we move forward. That's the total revenue that we'll work from. Again, you'll see later in what a tax decrease would cost for urban and rural, and as part of your policy options as we to balance the budget later. So the fun part is getting into the actual expenditure side, which is where we spend the money. This is the overall summary. This you have in your copy of your sheets. Again, just I would say don't put a lot of faith on that taxes revenues line quite yet. That'll come into more focus as we make some decisions next week on how on other expenditures that need to happen. So the first department is general government services. It's basically you guys, the operation of council and the operation of town hall here in the GCC. This is the org chart for the team that is here. The budget in front of you does include the costs that were recently approved for the HR coordinator and communications positions, which are currently vacant. So when we're thinking about things, those are already included in what we have. So this is the budget area that pertains specifically to the council. Here we have a reduction. We are calculating for the reduction in the number of councillors from 8 to 6, again, plus the mayor. All the approvals are now in place for that. Elections NB just sent us a note the other day confirming that the general election will be amended accordingly. So that process is now complete. So you see that as in the reduction on the councillor stipends, and basically that area we've reduced some of the other costs associated. We see a small increase in the memberships. We know UMNB is a new model for their membership fees. FCM is the other one it's the main one that goes in there, which is Federation of Canadian Municipalities, which their fees increase on an annual basis. So kind of predicting that. The two lines that are now zero at the bottom, that was a discovery by the treasurer and I not too long ago of budget lines that existed but actually nothing was being coded to them. So we've actually eliminated those budgets as to get rid of that surplus and properly code things elsewhere, which is what was intended anyway. So anything on the elected council budget? All right. Moving into town hall. Again, this is for the entire team. So you do have an increase in the salaries there in the administrative staff section. That incorporates those 2 new positions. We are seeing some reductions in conference fees and travel, or travel's up a bit, but again, we have new people coming on. But generally, outside of those 2 new positions, we're not proposing any changes there. Town hall property taxes are expected to be about the same. And we've increased our solicitor budget a little bit. One, it's been running a little high, but we also have a number of projects ongoing where we're negotiating terms of agreements and things like that. So we know we're expecting a little bit more of that in 2026 as well. So we're preparing for that accordingly. This section really is about the day-to-day operation of Town Hall. Not proposing big changes, with the exception of that water and sewer special projects corporate services line, which I've always said we gave it a misnomer last year in the budget. That was the funding that council was good enough to let us keep from the salary costs that went through attrition. For the purpose of trying to innovate the way we do things and fund new ways of doing business. We've certainly used some of that towards technology, which is still in progress. But having, with those 2 new positions coming on stream as well, those funds are being reassigned to support those other decisions of council. So that's a big change in that section, which is why you see the big drop in the bottom line within Town Hall. Anything there? Councillor.
Of the 237,000, was how much of it was used up? How much is being brought forward roughly?
Do you know what we've used?
Right now, I'm showing about 16,000.
Some of these projects are just coming on stream now, and the 2 major projects were our accounts payable and our payroll, and they're just starting. So
We've only used 16,000, but there's a lot more that it's pending.
there's more to come.
Yeah. Sorry. So what Mr. Godso and I will be doing is evaluating that line with the intention of pulling it into the stuff we have not spent into reserves, so that when those projects bills keep coming, we can draw it back out and for the purpose it was originally intended. So, yeah. Anything else? Okay. Cruising. So we see a decrease here on this sheet for the audit fees. Truth is, we budgeted high in 2025, higher than we ended up needing, so we're correcting that over budget. The cost of assessment is a number that's provided to us by our friends at the Government of New Brunswick as they do the assessment, and they charge us for it. Liability insurance up a little bit, certainly not near the 2024 costs that we saw before, so that's still a benefit from our change in provider. We see those rates are more manageable. Maintaining the community grants fund, we were a little over in 2025 on that, mainly because of the unexpected arrival of a hockey team that council was good enough to support. So we had to code those funds into the right area, which pushed that budget a little over budget. Going forward, we shouldn't have that problem. But and then we have the medical professionals incentive program here. In the report I gave council when we passed the policy, I had said that we might want to consider carrying a $100,000 a year budget on that one. So far, we've got a draft agreement out there to a doctor. So at this point in time, I think we can probably look at, unless the medical recruitment committee has more information than they haven't shared with me yet. I think we can get away with budgeting a little bit more, but it is something that you may decide to increase to the $100,000 figure if you wish. But it was just looking at it from my office. I was trying to be reasonable in what we did expect.
So that 100 that would cover us anyways for if we had to do 3 new doctors showed up. Like that would cover us because it was over a term, correct?
Yeah. Yeah, it's over a period of time.
I
but it's something that we'll consider when we get into the policy decisions. You may choose to, spend some money to increase that, just to make sure it's available as well. But at this point in time, the 50 is what's sitting in there. So we're happy to take your direction on your preference. So total government services for the area, you'll see it is down, not quite $100,000, but we were down quite a bit more at the public consultation sessions. But the decision of council to add those 2 positions ate up some of that room. But we have found some cost savings in there, even despite the fact that we've looked at the council's approved those 2 positions. Next area inside your document is protective services. Here's the snippet of our overall org chart that pertains to this area. Our single largest line item in this budget, of course, always is the RCMP. So we're looking at roughly a 3% increase in the cost of policing in 2026. Again, a requisition number that comes from our friends at the province. And then the other numbers there relate to the fact that we lease them their building and have responsibilities to maintain the facility. But not outside of the police cost itself, not too many changes there. It is something that came up at the public consultations about the cost of policing overall versus the services being provided, but also the thinking around, will the RCMP stay in the community policing game for the long term? It's certainly a debate being had in Ottawa these days, as the federal government continues to look at their service delivery models, and it is something that I think we and our friends at the province are going to need to find a mitigation plan for in the event that it does change, because policing is crazy expensive, but it's a critical service to every community in New Brunswick, including ours. So it's just something that we need to politically keep in mind when we talk to our superiors at the GNB, and be aware of as we move forward about what changes might happen in the near future. So this is getting into our firefighting force. So we have a small a decrease in this budget, mainly around salary benefits. This is largely to do to the fire chief's analysis of overtime and things like that. We're not reducing the members or anything like that. Just taking a harder look at the cost projections. Otherwise, it would be a status quo budget for the fire department, at least in the firefighting force side of things. On the administration side, again, status quo budget. We're not expecting any changes to the basic operations of the department. The alarm system, again, we're holding steady there. One thing to note is the radio maintenance lines do look like they're probably a little over budgeted. I know the fire chief has a number of radios that require some work. Getting that work done is difficult, and the expertise is hard to get. So we're constantly making sure that we have a sufficient budget so that when he does get access to that contracted service, that the funds are there to make sure those radios work, as they are important. Water cost transfer. This is a fee that we are allowed to put in our budget to this is the one time actually that money can transfer from this budget into the utility, and essentially it is paying the utility for water used by the fire department through the course of their operations. We have had this number at $125,000 for a very, very long time. Mr. Godso has went back and looked at the regulations around this transfer. There is a set formula about the maximum that you can transfer. We are going to be reviewing that as we prepare the utility budget, and we will be bringing some policy options to you around that, whether we keep it at this value or recognize a little bit more revenue that needs to move to the utility to cover off a reasonable amount for those services. Yep.
Would our fire hydrants fall under that as well, like maintenance on those? No? Good.
No, maintenance on fire hydrants is part of the utility budget. Now, when you, I don't think, do they calculate that, Frank, into the formula? Or is it just straight up?
No, it's based.
Go ahead.
The formula is based on cost for water distribution. So it strictly looks at that and population. So there's a certain rate that you can apply depending on what the population is and what your total cost for water distribution is. And that's basically how you, and it's based on last year's budget. Or last year's actuals, I should say.
So that's generated completely from a formula. It's not metered at all, how much water's used.
Yep. And then the fire training budget, fire chief is holding the same as the previous year. So fire stations and buildings this year, again, slight increase into this, but not much. It's a bit in supplies and electricity, which we know electrical bills are continuing to grow for everybody. So you'll probably see electricity increases throughout the budget as we expect rates to continue to climb as they do. Yep.
For the fire station, should we consider doing something similar that we did for the ladder truck? Like put money away every year for potential, now you're smiling, you probably already got an idea. Go ahead.
The answer is absolutely. Multi-year capital planning is critical. It's something we haven't done well. We've done some of it. We did it for the ladder truck and on a very simplified basis. My goal is still to get to a little bit more sophisticated version of it, where it's not only for buildings like replacement of 199 eventually, 199 Union, but also replacement of vehicles and rolling stock. Realistically, we should be putting money now into a reserve fund to eventually replace Tower 1, right? Because you'll have that Tower 1 for 20 years, 25 years. Scrounging up all the money in the last 5 years of that lifespan is hard. Doing a little bit over the entire lifespan of the asset is much easier on the year-to-year budgeting. So that's, yes, we definitely should be putting money aside, but not only for fire halls, but for all of our assets as part of our asset management plan. Firefighting equipment. Here you will see a decrease in the equipment supplies purchases. That is not that we're providing the guys with less equipment. We have historically floated the SCBAs, the breathing apparatus, and the bunker gear through the operating budget in this line. We are now trying to take a more accurate approach and putting that into the capital side of the budgeting. So it won't appear in the operating budget, but you will see it as a request on the capital side. You'll see that there's a few spots in the budget where, quite frankly, we hadn't been in past councils and past administrations. We hadn't been filing capital plans with council and kind of winging it based on what the mitigating step that the administration took at the time was we'll just float everything through the operating budget where when we put in our request to council. Frank's been good enough to catch those and start correcting those. So there's a few spots where you see some decreases for those reasons as we get, again, more accurate with our accounting and it'll help us with our long-term planning as well. So the total for fire protection, a little tiny decrease, but very much a status quo budget. Our citizens have said their indications were that they were very happy with the fire service, and we are continuing to approach it in the same manner we always have. Getting further into protective services, we have the bylaw and building inspection services. Again, these are status quo budgets for that, and as I mentioned, don't get too much sticker shock from the $100,000 in dangerous and unsightly expenses. That has a revenue offset. It's just to make sure that we have a place to code if we have to tear down a building. We code the expenses there, and then when the revenue comes in, we get to balance it off on the revenue side. Oh, over here.
Have we looked at costs for inspection services from the RSC instead of going there ourselves?
Yep, I had that conversation. I have a quote in 20. If we tried to get into the 2026 program right now, it would be significantly higher, largely because they need enough notice so that to spread it across the entire assessment base for their program. And they've already done their calculations and approved their budget, and so we would be an add-on at the current rates. However, if a decision was made to go that way and we did it early enough, then we'd be able to see a much better rate structure from the RSC.
So I just want to add to that just one sec. There's some consideration of doing the unsightly, dangerous and unsightly through them, and we don't have to foot that bill for that 100,000, so to speak, as well. There's some talk about that as well, but it hasn't grown into fruition yet, but it's coming. Councillor?
Yeah, just out of curiosity, what is the max, what's the cutoff point for the province for unsightly payments back to us? They must have a cutoff that they don't fund or don't return back to us. Is there such a thing?
I've never, normally we're running, 10 to 20, 30,000 for an unsightly, for a tear down, that sort of thing. I've never had an issue with that. Generally, they have recovery on the other side because they'll add it to the property tax for the owner. But I've never had an issue trying to collect. Normally we submit it and we get it back, say about March, but I've never had a problem. I'm not sure if there is a limit, but we have never had an issue over the years that I've been dealing with it. Maybe someday I will.
So here we have our kind of last section for protective services, which is our animal and pest control, which is our contracted potential dog catcher for colloquial term. We have that's a contracted service. There's no indication at this time to change contractors or change the service. Again, continual dialogue around the rural element, but we do need to get the animal control bylaw sorted as far as what's going to be the standards for the rural area, which if that comes into play next year, there might be a slight increase in costs there, but probably could be nothing that wouldn't be able to be mitigated with other decisions in the department. Crosswalk guards, never a concern there. They provide a great service, and we try to make sure that they're looked after from a clothing perspective and things like that to look after, to keep them as best we can. And then the RSC Safety Committee, you see the $44 budget. Hollis was in and talked to committee about that previously, about their budget. Just a major reduction based on their internal operation changes as far as that committee goes. So as we said, the overall protective services budget, very much a status quo budget, actually with a very slight reduction, which is what we always challenge our department heads to try and come up with. And kudos to Sean and his team for finding those savings along the way. Moving over to our transportation department. These are the kind of things that they're responsible for doing inside this budget. Again, snippet of the department here from the org chart. As you'll see in this shot, this transportation services is a HR-rich area of our budget. These guys, we also pick up the cost for the utility here, and like I said, in the revenue side, the utility pays for those services. So this will be inflated over and above what would just be here. And I will note the change from 2025 to 2026 is high. We are looking at that, Mr. Godso and I are looking at that the estimations on what was going to be required in 2025 and 26 were done from a different point of view and a different philosophy. So we're taking a look at this is the more conservative version of the numbers that we got. So for budget purposes, it's nice because we think it's the higher number. But working between Frank's spreadsheets and his assumptions and Mr. Morton's trends analysis and operations analysis, that number might come down a bit as we finalize. But this is the higher number, which is nice for you as from a policy options point of view, because it won't get higher than this one. And yeah, that's the big thing on that slide. This is our general equipment for the department. You see repairs are up. Our equipment is, you'll see when we get to capital planning, our equipment it gets older. And we always give our guys a lot of kudos for the efforts they do to keep these things running. They are an inventive bunch to make sure that they get maximum value out of every piece of equipment that they're blessed to receive from council. But as they age, they report the cost of those repairs do go up. Again, fuel is a natural increase there. And then street sweeper one here is a reduction. This is a direct result of council's desire to move more to the salt. Talked a bit about this at the public consultation for those who were there, but realistically what we're finding is that the brushes for the sweeper, we're not going through them as quickly. So the guys were able to reduce that budget line as a result of that project. And you'll see that what we do with the salt in an upcoming slide. Here's the stuff for the workshop itself. And again, I think the only real change here is the power and the supplies line. And supplies, if you look in 2025, we're sneaking up on that budget line. In 24, we were higher. So the trend analysis is telling us that we need to up that budget a little bit just to make sure that the guys have what they need to make sure that all that good work they do out there is funded. Road, streets, roadway services. Here we get our sand and gravel. So you see the reduction in the sand and gravel. That's because we're not putting as much sand down. The other part here is line painting as a contract service that you'll see what it cost us in 2025 was a little bit higher. We might have to bump that up a hair more once we take another hard look at that line, but that's the big changes there. This one, here's where you see your salt. This is an increase, it is an increase in the unit price of salt that we are expecting, but also an increase in the volume that we plan to purchase. So it's, as we continue to morph that program, and it does match up with what for the most part, the weather patterns that we've been seeing the last few years. It's been, as you probably have noticed, it's been a lot of icy stuff as opposed to the fluffy stuff. So we do need to make sure we have that on hand. Street lighting, of course, the electricity goes up, as it always does. Slow down there for a second. Street signs, poles, etc. We did increase this in 2026. We have begun this year. We began taking on some of the replacement of poles in the rural area. And we didn't really factor that in 2025, so we are starting to factor that in 2026. It's, as we talk to our friends at the government about who's responsible for what when it comes to those rural roadways, they're more than happy to keep doing the roads, but the signage and stuff, they're pushing back towards us, so we're going to have to plan for that. And Sean's already been doing some of it, so that's that increase there. And the rest of it is pretty much status quo budget in this area. This is the airport. You can see a reduction in the overall budget for the airport, mainly from the property maintenance section. In this 2025, we had $30,000 for the crack sealing of the runway. That was completed, so don't have to budget for it again in 2026. In addition to the numbers you're seeing in front of you, we have obtained the services of qualified consultant to do an airport essentially master plan and strategic plan for the rejuvenation of that facility, and right through to not only its operations, but also its governance and management. Fortunately, that has been externally funded. So we're not picking up those bills, but we are going to get the benefit of that work. So that's a great thing, but it's something that's happening that you won't have to see in your budget. So in transportation services, you have the increase there. Mainly that is in the wages section, and that's most of those are unionized wages that are increasing. And we're going to take another look at those transportation wages because we think we got to figure out which estimation is more accurate as far as that goes, but is the higher one. The section we lovingly call environmental health, which is actually dumps and landfills and garbage collection. The increase here is mainly in the waste collection side of things. It's the contract for hauling. That is for both the urban and rural areas. And we continue to, I continue to advocate for looking at a more regional approach to that service. Mayor's nodding because I'm in his ear a lot before he goes to RSC meetings on the topic. Because I do think the region could actually do this at a much cheaper rate, but that day has yet to come. Community development is what they call this section. Mainly it's things that we land and things that we own and work towards economic development on. Here, the big change is in our development incentive grant. Major investment there. That relates to your development incentive program. So we have a number of things that are not only currently obligated to be paid in 2026, but some other projects coming on stream that needed to be funded. One of the big ones, we got these big developments around housing. So we need to make sure that there's sufficient funds in there to cover that off. Otherwise, things are okay. I do want to make a note on the Economic Development Agency support. That number will be increasing. Mr. Corbett and I had been working on a plan to bring that number down. We had a board meeting yesterday and had a really good conversation around the topic. And I think we're going to be proposing a different plan. So the next incarnation of this budget that you see will incorporate their full ask, which is $125,000. But there are some other things that are going to go alongside that ask that I think council will be very happy to see that Rivers and I are going to be co-authoring for the Future St. Stephen Board of Directors and for council's view. So stand by on that one, but do expect that one to go up by about $50,000 on that. Your Worship?
Just back on the economic development incentive, for the sake of the people in the room and online, can you just give a quick rundown on how that works? How that money's,
So the development incentive bylaw is pretty much what happens is a year after a major development occurs, we do an evaluation of the amount the assessment grew on that property. And then based on that number, we calculate the development incentive. It's not quite exactly the same as the taxes they pay on the property, but what we do is we take the growth that happened and we share it between the developer who put in the development and the municipality. And over time, the share changes. So in the early years, it's very heavily those new taxes, we'll call it, or new tax value gets transferred to the developer. It could be 95% in year one, and usually over a 10-year period, it's a sliding scale down to 0% for the developer. And so we share that economic benefit over the early course of a new development. It does tend to help new developments get those early operating costs under control. But we also get to share some of the benefit from the tax revenue that we generate, that gets generated for us from the assessment. So, and council has some other tools in there that they can use and apply as they see fit to make sure that projects that are of public value get over the finish line. So that's what we use that money for. But every dollar that comes out of that line is intended to create multiple dollars afterwards in return.
Add my thoughts on that. It's not always cash neither. It could be property. It could be in-kind work, infrastructure, sorts of things. But yes, but in the end, it works out the same cash value. Thanks.
So other development services, these are the buildings we own. Some of which are we have lease people in. Some of it relates to 6 King Street, which we're still working on transferring off of our books as soon as that can be managed. We had to bring the Oak Bay Hall onto the on stream here, and of course we had to bring in our new facility at Progress Drive. Make sure we have the budget to operate that facility as well. So that's the increases there. Wharf maintenance. Almost all of this money goes to the installation and removal of the floating dock. But we did want to bump it up a little bit for actual wharf maintenance. Historically, we've only ever worried about putting in and taking out the dock, but we do know that vandalism happens and whatnot. To that end, another opportunity to thank the citizens that volunteered to do some work on Kev's lighthouse out there on the wharf. That was a lovely gesture, and we were happy to have their support and support them in their efforts as well. We have a reduction in the RSC tourism promotion. Again, Hollis spoke to that, but a change in the way that they're doing business there. So that's this little section of your budget here. So overall, we do have a large increase in that area, but it is the development incentive line that's driving the big increase in this area, which I think is a positive thing. Getting into the last sections here, recreation and culture. This is Kev and his team, both inside this facility and out in the parks and in the pools and events. So starting with the outside stuff, pretty much we're looking at a status quo budget. We do have a reduction in the parks and playgrounds area on the staffing side. We have an increase in the horticulturalist supplies. Obviously, that's to support your new greenhouse. But otherwise, it's a status quo budget, and so overall, it's a small reduction in the area. This is the Milltown pool. So we are seeing a small increase here, but we've got the chemicals going up a bit, wages going up a little bit, but nothing overly earth-shattering. Obviously, the joy of having the new liner in there is going to be a benefit. I think without that, I suspect that the chemicals budget would have been a lot higher, as we are constantly losing water. But overall, not too big of an increase for that facility. Other recreation, a lot of these are zeros because those costs have been reallocated to a more appropriate section, so you won't see them on next year's budget. Small increase, $5,000 increase in the community events line as we continue to support work there. Some of that is also to be coordinated with our friends at the BIA and Chamber on joint community event initiatives as we continue to work closely with them. So that's the only real change here is the $5,000 for a little bit more on the community event side. Board Arena, happy to say that one gets to come off. Everything's in place for the transfer of that facility in December, which means come January, we won't have any costings out there. The facility is, again, tell council, is largely emptied now. The guys have done an excellent job of getting stuff out of there. We had a few old file boxes to destroy that Celeste and I have been out coding and digging through some archives to make sure that what's out there and what we need to keep and what we don't need to keep. But that's one of the good news ones, is why I included the rendering of the new facility that will be on there that won't be ours, but we are more than happy to have there. Garcelon Civic Center, so this facility, again, labor-intensive facility, so we do see an increase on the staff salaries and benefits lines, but otherwise mostly status quo budget here. Physical operations, this would be Mr. McJane and his crew, and running around doing arena maintenance and maintenance all over this facility. Not much change in the day-to-day lines, other than the electricity and the and staff salary. Again, heavily unionized facility. The pool operations here. One of the things we are doing here is we're putting a little more money in for the professional development and aquatic training. Aaron's been running some great programming when it comes to the training side, and quite frankly, award-winning training and so we wanted to make sure that we're supporting those efforts as we move forward. A little bit more on maintenance and repair, but you see the year to date we've had some struggles along the way. You will also see some things on your capital budget for proposed improvements within the GCC in general.
That's what I was concerned with. Sorry, I think we need to see some more funding in the facility. So you're going to get that through another row. Okay.
Yeah, so the things that you're probably hearing concerns about, like humidifiers and major lights, sound systems, you'll see those. You actually see a bunch of it listed on the last slide of tonight with some estimated price tags on them. But that's part of the conversation we'll have next week of what gets the highest priority and what gets funded and what maybe gets put off for now. But yes, you will see those. The meeting conference areas, again, the only big change here is the reduction in the fitness area. Another line where capital items had been being operationalized. Because was it 3 treadmills we put through? Yeah. So we're fixing that approach. And those were bought and whatnot, so we don't need to buy them again. So making sure that we reduce that line. Food and beverage, you're seeing increases here. This is a positive sign. This is being driven by our new hockey team. So when you look at your student event staff, your canteen merchandise, those have offsetting revenue from the sales in the facility. So as much as we hate to see expense lines go up, these ones are a good indicator that things are happening, that we need to buy more canteen merchandise because it is selling during the events. So that's a positive. But
it's also positive outside of the facility as well in our community because these people are working and getting paid, so it's really good to see. It's a good economic driver.
So special events, I always try to remind council every year because sometimes even we forget internally. Special events is a specific line created for events that we think will either break even or turn a profit, as opposed to the community events, which are Canada Day, New Brunswick Day, those things which are done for a whole different reason. So these ones this is funds that we use for bringing in the Sea Dogs preseason game, for those types of events. It could be a concert that happens to be traveling through and is willing to do a stop if we have funds to bring them in. In the past, we've had those opportunities that we couldn't act on because we didn't have a funding line for that. So it's a small war chest for the community events or for the special events. So even I do it. But we do have the offsetting revenue on the revenue side, so it's a net zero as far as tax rates go. So that's what that is. And then the grounds and the parking lot are just that we got to paint it and we got to pay taxes on it. So the Garcelon Civic Center, again, mostly a status quo budget with a small increase that mostly relates to staffing costs, but no major changes. Our friends at the library, they've provided us with their budget request. That was in your package. And so we put in the full value here. Very much appreciated the work that they've done, and Councillor Wright being involved with that board, to give us a good look at their budget and have good conversations about how they were approaching things. So I think there's no problem with the budget as that we're showing here and holding it the same as last year. And then this is a regional cost share part. So you remember we got $230,000 coming in from the RSC, but we got to pay $186,000 into the pot at the front end. So we do net a positive on it mainly because of this facility being a regional asset. But this is where we code the cost when they send us the bill. So overall, Rec and Culture, you're up about $200,000 overall. Again, in mainly staff costs. Now, you will be presented with a very large list from the Rec Department on capital requests that you're going to be able to sort through. But that's the discussion for next week. Fiscal services. Now, this is where we do debt management, we do reserve fund transfers. You're going to see a lot of zeros in this section because usually it's the very last thing we do, whether that as we sort out all of our other policy options. So Frank has done the legwork on some of our our interest and the debt we've already incurred, and the cost of carrying those debts. As I say, the great majority, if not all of that debt is still borne by the Ward 2 urban taxpayer because it came from the pre-marriage borrowing decisions. But not much in the way of changes there, just things that we already need to owe. This is the slide that I hate seeing zeros. You guys all know I like my reserves and I like them to be funded. So you see this is where we would transfer those funds around into the various savings accounts. But right now we have not had the opportunity to do that. That'll be next week's as we figure out how much money we have to work with and where we want it to it'll best serve the purposes of our community. So our total expenditures, everything all in that we went through tonight, is $13,994,550, which is right now is sitting as a slight reduction over our 2025 budget. And keep in mind the number we talked about that I presented was $14.9 million if you kept your tax rates the same. So one of the things that we heard that I heard after the first public consultation session was that what was missed was the game where I gave people money to go spend on various things, and we gave them $1 million to go spend on various things. Next week, you guys are going to get to do it for real. We're going to have $910 that we need to allocate somewhere, which I can show you. So this is a screenshot from the wonderful portal that Frank and I get blessed to use from the government when we submit our budgets. That red box, it's counterintuitive. A negative and a red number there means your expenses are below your potential revenue. We can't hit the submit button on a budget unless that number is less than $5. We have to, because we have balanced budget legislation. So as we move forward, we're going to be deciding what to do with that $910,000, and working with you on that, and which is the goal of next week. So the goal tonight was to kind of get you a really good understanding where we stood today. Hopefully have the opportunity for you folks to go and talk to citizens and receive phone calls and emails and all those fun things you get about what to do with this money. Whether that's tax rate decreases or investing it in capital or, yeah, I mean, you will have, I'm sure, I know because the next slide's going to show you, you're going to have more requests than you have money. And that's why you're here, to make those decisions for us. But hopefully there is you have a nice week here of being able to have some dialogues out in the community. These are just some of the things that we already had on the list. So tax rates, I showed you that it's $50,000 for an 1 cent urban decrease in tax rate, $40,000 to get a 1 cent decrease in the rural tax rate. And then we have security, sidewalks, roadway, reserves. Kev's department is looking for a Zamboni, a new pickup truck. I know they desperately need a new fridge up in the kitchen. We have, Kev struggles to try and keep the bank at the St. Croix River from eroding underneath our nice paved trail. So there's work there. Mary talked about the solar lights project. We have, if we're going to get that done, we have to come to the table with some cash as well. Events department trailer, they have this hope for a trailer where they could store all those inflatables and things like that, so they can roll up to the fall fair, detach, drop the trailer, unload, and be ready to go. New AV equipment for the conference rooms. So you're up there. Many of you were up there last while with me, noticing we weren't using the overhead stuff. It's gone on us, so it needs to be improved. Yeah, well, hopefully that one's fixed. But the SCBA's that we talked about that aren't flowing through the operating budget anymore, the bunker gear for the fire department, a new vehicle, a backhoe, a dump truck. Some of these things have been on long-term plans for longer than I've worked here, like that backhoe for instance, and the salt shed. But there's lots of asks out there, and citizens will have more asks. So I think we have lots of things for you to look at. And I think our conversations next week are going to be very interesting. Yeah, go ahead.
So just for clarity, that the screen's gone, but what you had in the red was 900 and some thousand. That brings us to status quo on the tax rate.
Correct.
Right. So if we want to do more than that, we gotta find other sources. Right. Yeah. Because 900 is probably not gonna get it everything we want. That's for sure. So.
Yeah, and that's the unenviable task that you guys have signed up for, is making those determinations. Obviously, there's tax increases are an option, tax decreases are an option. Doing things, we will be making some presentations as to why we think certain things on this list, or even things that aren't on this list yet, are important. And you guys will get to sort through it. And what the approach to that next meeting will be is, as you guys start approving things, we'll have a running total of that 910 kind of up on the screen, and you can get a really good sense of where you're at each decision point. And you may get to the end and decide, you know what, let's reconsider item 4 and pull it out to put something else in. I mean, that's what happens. And but it's a good debate for you guys to have. It's a good debate for the public to see you have, because these are the struggles of your positions and on our positions. So I think, and the more that they see that, and the more the public has an opportunity to weigh in on those decisions, is a good thing. So yeah, I think next week is going to be a very interesting dialogue around the table.
Well, I got another question. I didn't see a combination levy in here anywhere. We're not ready for that yet? Because that would really help with the tourism.
Yeah, it's not incorporated yet, so it'd be on the list as a potential revenue source, which should be added. Yeah, that came up in a public session, or with someone the other day. Oh, Future St. Stephen. It came up briefly during that board meeting the other day. So yeah, it's there. It's something to be noted.
Councillor Hardin? Okay. Excellent.
And then the reason we're not seeing anything related to utilities like wells and that kind of stuff is on the other budget, and like water tower and. Right.
Yeah. So when we get to, we'll be doing another meeting to talk about the utility and utility capital needs for sure. But yeah, as we get more into the capital side, you're going to see the utility operating. You'll probably recall from past years, there's not a lot of wiggle room there. We run a very lean as possible budget on that side. But it's the capital side. It's those capital works that are required. And like as you say, the water tower, either refurbishments or replacements, twinning of transmission lines for redundancy. We have been working on plans for that, so there'll be way even bigger asks on that side that are coming. Yes, for sure. Well, the 900,000 can't go there though. Remember that.
Right onto that. Yeah.
Councillor Harding?
Thank you. I didn't see community grants in here. Did I miss it?
Unfortunately, you missed it. It's in at 50,000, same as it has been for the last number of years.
Thank you.
All right, let's jump. All right. No more questions on that. The next one is. Oh, yeah, you can.
I would be totally remiss if I didn't thank the work of Frank, his team, like my entire team, on putting together the budget. It's not an easy task, and we need to. I get the benefit of them giving me a whole bunch of rolled up numbers that I get to question, just playing my role as counselor and trying to get the answers before you guys ask. But they have to do this as well as run their day-to-day operations, and it's not easy. And especially with corporate services being short and covering off technology installation projects and other things, I didn't want to miss the opportunity to publicly thank them for that effort, because you guys sometimes joke around after meetings about you guys get the easy job when we're bringing the finished products to you. They bring a lot of finished products to me, and I do really much appreciate it.
Yes, and many changes in those departments too to absorb and adjust. So, no, thank you so much for everything, and on top of the province freezing our tax assessments too, it made it more challenging. So, but we'll get into that next week. All right. So thank you, everyone, and I will take your move to adjourn. Councillor Harding, all those in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Motion carried. Meeting closed.